Good morning, USA! And look who I conned into coming with me today.
I hate that rhymed.
I had to work for it.
You really did.
We are heading to locals, and I am bringing the Shaddoll deck. My cameraman is playing something a little more competent. He's playing Guru. He's coming off the heels of a 0-4 finish. I'm hoping to top that finish this time, and probably he is as well, but worst case scenario, we'll just scrub out early and go get some of the papa.
Is it 0-4 if you drop at 0-2?
Oh, actually it was 0-2. We'll never know if you were going to have a winning record or not. It could have gone anyway.
And they were all like 2-1 games.
Yeah, they were all 2-1s. One was against Dark Magician,
Don't
and the
talk
guy
about
was
it.
just like activating the effect of Dark Magical Circle, which should be illegal. Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, and we are back with another episode of Locals Live. You thought you'd be free of this series? Fool! Oh, your arrogance will be your undoing. I never start series and then fail to finish them. By the way, stream highlights every Friday. This is the second part in our 3-part Shaddoll Structure Deck series. If you haven't seen the first one, please go back to my channel and give me a little bit of ad revenue. I bought 3 copies of the Shaddoll Structure Deck and took it to locals. I'll be uploading the rounds from that locals this week and next week, and we might even get a third part out of it, pending coronavirus. I'm not able to record more footage at locals for the foreseeable future for that reason, and I don't really subject myself to viral infection for anything less than 15,000 views. So if we can get the view count up, sure, I'll go ahead and risk my personal safety and well-being. But for the time being, I'm going to have to satisfy you with games against my roommate. Our opponent is playing Pendulum. This is an individual I get to play against quite frequently, and unfortunately I sport about a 0% win rate. It's something about the decks he builds specifically beat me. They're not necessarily the most optimal Pendulum lists, but they're always interesting. You can see his hand contains 2 Mist Valley Apex Avian, a card that most Pendulum pilots have cut for that literal exact reason. You don't want to open 2 of them and no scales. But of course the Gorl found off of a Magical Mastery is probably enough to get things going. Here comes Jackal King. Joke's on you, I don't aim to activate monster effects. What deck are we playing again? He's also got Mythical Institution maybe, on his side of the field. I have made a point to never read these cards on principle. Here's where you link summon a copy of Electromite, and of course that card's banned. This is the Electromite substitute. Crowley, Origin of Prophecy. I don't know what it was translated to in TCG, but the gist of it is you get to reveal 3 spellbook cards from your deck, and your opponent randomly adds one to your hand. Of course, if you get Knowledge, Blue Boy, and Secrets, there's really no downside. Knowledge, I suppose, is the worst one you can find, but it doesn't really matter. It looks like I've given him Blue Boy. Oh, nope, Knowledge it is. Hey, excellent. Always put your faith in the heart of the sniper. I don't have much to do against this exact build. If I open Shaddoll Fusion, it's quite good, but otherwise it's probably not. And even if I open Shaddoll Fusion, there are many scenarios, for example, maybe my opponent ends on an Endymion, where I can't win anyway. One thing that's frustrating about this version of the Pendulum list is a lot of their power is concentrated in the main deck. They don't have to rely on these extremely strong enders from the extra. They're more than content to just rest on their laurels and beat face with Jackal Kings. You can see my opponent has what I believe to be a Chronograph, 2 Avian, and then a couple of spells. This is about as bad as opens get for my opponent, but unfortunately, for this version of the Shaddoll deck to pop off at all, I need them to commit to plays on board. Oh boy, it looks like he is just elected to pass turn, or at the very least is considering it. There's not much I can do with my opener. There's a Pero Cerberus, a Shaddoll Core, and a Trick Clown, and he's just gonna pass like that. Oh no! If I was playing anything competent, this would be the easiest game in history. But alas, not only is my deck incompetent, so am I. I'm going to set 2 and pass. Take that. See, T setting is overrated. You don't want to overcommit to the board, so I recommend L setting. That's when you set 2 cards, and then on your next turn, you receive an L. He's also got a copy of Secret Village of the Spellcasters, and really it's no wonder why his hand has worked out the way it has with this few scales. I mean, sheesh. I was wrong, it wasn't a chronograph, it was an Endymion, and this Spell Power Mastery should be able to get the low scale for this extremely large bungus. Spell Power Mastery is just such an incredible card. You can see my opponent is playing what has become all but standard in these decks at this point, a singular copy of Reflector. This is another problematic card for me, but it's very possible that I'm able to beat through it. They're going to load up that field spell with counters. I think it's at something like 40 or 50 at this point. If you're playing Mythical Institution, at some point the counters stop mattering. You're just going to be able to activate all of your effects no matter what, and your opponent's going to have to deal with it. Alright, they're going to look at the hand real quick, and yeah, it's really not doing them any favors. I mean, performing a Pendulum Summon here is of course quite powerful. A couple of Mist Valley Apex Avians out of the hand will do wonders for this board state, but there's really nothing else they have going. This is gonna have to win the game, but honestly, against a deck as incompetent as the one we've put together, I think it's pretty likely that it will. I look at the Wendy just like, I don't know, trying to will additional text onto this card. Maybe if I dream hard enough, it'll suddenly become more playable. Unfortunately, I don't have access to Neostorm Access, and cannot manifest additional Link monsters into my extra deck from the Data Storm. As a result, we're going to have to play these matches without Cloth Heap. Oh boy, those are 3 big ones. Oh, yikes. Okay, double Mist Valley Apex Avian was certainly a shocker for me, but the Jackal King pretty much seals things up as well. I believe the Jackal King can pull counters from anywhere, which is terrible news, since the Institution now has about 45 counters on it. It looks like my opponent is going to go for the Endymion as well. Oh, yikes. That's going to be the entirety of my board, and likely the game. All my opponent has to do is correctly negate things. The worst part of it is, this core has a grave effect. You know, there's something it could do if it was sent to the graveyard by a card effect, but unfortunately, with no other spells and traps in the graveyard, you know, it's not going to activate. I'm going to activate Wendy, and, God, I gotta read this card. Just checking real quick to see at which point the counters are placed on this card. It matters for negation purposes, of course. The results are in. It's as bad as I expected. My opponent's going to go ahead and negate the effect of Wendy, and we're in game 2. Alright, so this time my hand is a lot better. I don't think I can allow my opponent to go first, so I'm going to go ahead and, quad set, even more powerful than T-set, a big overextension in the face of evenly matched. Anyway, I expect my opponent to still be able to pop off through this. You can see that I have one set card that's extremely powerful. I certainly hope I get to show it off this match. The side deck options for Shaddoll are unbelievable in the context of the general sideboard afforded to structure decks. Shaddoll specifically has access to not only Twin Twisters, but also Lava Golem and Unending Nightmare. The remainder of the board space is, in our build, reserved for Ariel, double Shaddoll Dragon, and triple Lost Wind, just because we're looking for additional playables, and those are the closest to the deck comes. Our opponent's going to lead with a copy of Knowledge, and oh boy, little fist pump in the air. With a hand so light on scales, it looks like he's finally found a way to actually perform a Pendulum Summon. This deck just absolutely confounds me. He's so deep on cards that don't sit in the Pendulum Zone. It's a wonder that it ends up working at all. You can see he's drawn 2 right there, a Terraforming and a copy of Super Polymerization. Super Poly is kind of funny against Shaddoll, but this version of Shaddoll is unlikely to commit to the board in a way that something like Invoked Shaddoll would. Is that an argument for, I don't know, this build over the actual relevant one? No, it is not. So, unfortunately, our opponent does have the evenly matched, and there's really nothing we can do about that. Deck with access to Solemn Judgment might have something to beat it, but we do not. We're going to go down to 1 trap card, and you all have exactly 1 guess as to what that is. He's looking at this Super Polymerization and finally decides to set it. This is a nombo I find myself running into all the time. You want to activate Evenly Matched in order to get a sweet, like, 6-for-1 against your opponent, but if your main playmaker or equalizer in your hand afterwards is Super Polymerization, you've just screwed yourself out of its activation. He's going to go ahead and get Mythical Institution here, and one really frustrating thing about Mythical Institution is that if it has any counters on it at all, it works like Kaiju Waterfront. You can just go ahead and remove the counters instead of destroying it. Oh, I apologize. That's Magical City. The Institution is the card in his hand. I always get my libraries of magical expertise mixed up. Can you blame me? It looks like he's got a Lava Golem in hand. Again, really betting that I was actually going to go wide. Unfortunately, I just don't have the capabilities. He's going to go ahead and activate the Institution. We'll respond to Harvard with a copy of Unending Nightmare. Unending Nightmare is unbelievable versus this deck. I mean, it's extremely powerful versus the version that lacks scales in any sort of reasonable metric, but in general, this card is so strong against Pendulum. The only reason it doesn't really see a lot of play anymore is because Pendulum isn't exactly a tier 1 meta threat. I have fond memories of activating this card versus True Draco players in Zoo format and them scooping up immediately. The card is just bonkers. We're going to go ahead and destroy Institution as well as City and then pass it back to our opponent. It looks like they found Scales, but they don't really have anything to Pendulum Summon. They pass it back to me, and I get to Flip Summon a monster! We're going to go for Shaddoll Wendy here. We're going to get ourselves a copy of, I believe that's Squamata. I can't exactly see, but all Shaddolls look the same to me. I'm not racist. They're just all miasmic. We'll activate L, and then send both Shaddoll Wendy and this copy of Squamata to the graveyard to get a copy of Akpalone. This is one of the new structure deck Shaddolls. You can see it's the cover card on the extremely powerful paper mat. When it is summoned to the field, is able to negate the effect of a card that's on the field, which does absolutely nothing versus empty board states. But importantly, its materials are 2 Shaddolls with disparate attributes, and it floats, unlike Construct, into a Shaddoll card from the graveyard or the deck. I mean, it's just absolutely bonkers. We're deciding right now about the Squamata. I don't know what I sent, but I have a pretty good idea of what it is. After my opponent shuffles, we're going to start a new chain with the card that we sent. And surprise, surprise, it's Beast. Ooh, I look at the graveyard real quick. You can see we've drawn a Blackluster Soldier. Again, my opponent's deck is just much more powerful than mine, so I'm including 3 copies of Blackluster Soldier, so I'm more effectively able to close out games that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. Unfortunately, without any access to a light monster, we can't make it yet, but I still feel pretty good about our chances. We're going to get in for 2,500 points of damage here, putting our opponent to a healthy 55, and, I don't know, hopefully that'll be enough to take it home. As long as we have 6 remaining activations of Unending Nightmare, I feel pretty good about our chances. Our opponent's thinking real fast. Oh, that Lava Golem just rotting in the hand. Really, if I was doing anything more impressive than what I'm currently doing, I might actually be able to do it. I'm going to go for the Shaddoll to get a copy of Wendy. As our opponent passes back to us, I will flip summon this copy of Wendy and activate her effect. I'm going to look real quick at the graveyard. This Shaddoll wasn't activated this turn, so we do have access to the Shaddoll's grave effect, which is incredibly powerful. I should probably start referring to these individual cards as differently named. Shaddoll Wendy and Shaddoll Incarnation are 2 completely different activations. We're going to go for the Shaddoll Incarnation now to flip up this copy of Hedgehog that we just set. Our opponent will meet it with a Super Polymerization. Ugh, yuck. Honestly, I'm not too beat up about this. Like, is it really, really bad for us? Yes. Obviously, we don't want to be super polyed in a turn that we were otherwise going to go for lethal, but we're going to be able to activate so many effects that we might be able to push through regardless. We're going to go ahead and get a copy of Shaddoll Fusion, and now with a monster in the extra monster zone, we can send a light monster to the graveyard to get a copy of Construct, and get a copy of, you guessed it, Blackluster Soldier onto our side of the field to deal with this otherwise problematic Pringus. Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, unfortunately for our opponent, only will trigger if it is sent to the graveyard. If we banish it, or if it's not destroyed, we will preserve our special summoned monsters. Alright, I'm looking at the deck real quickly, and then going to check how how this card works. Starving Venom is one of those cards you have to read a couple of times just to make sure that you remember it has to go where, and it has to be destroyed in what capacity, before you really feel comfortable playing into it. I mean, it's just such a powerful equalizer. I love super polying into this card, attacking into something with lower attack, and then wiping my opponent's entire board. It's just, there's no feeling like it. We're going to go ahead and add a Beast to the hand. And our opponent's going to take a quick look at the life points. Yeah, you are pretty far down. We'll activate Shaddoll Fusion, and they have no response. Well, it's time to make Construct, and isn't that alt art beautiful? I really do like it. I mean, El Shaddoll Construct in general looks very good, but the retrain looks fantastic. We're just trying to decide on a light target here. We've got a couple of relevant ones. I think the one I'm probably going to go for is Electromagnetic Turtle. Remember, we're not playing very many just by virtue of the fact that none of them are really good to draw, and while Perform Age Trick Clown is extremely powerful in decks that have access to Link monsters, the only Link monster we have access to is Shaddoll Construct. That requires 2 flip monsters, so as a result, you know, I'm not feeling great about it. We're going to go ahead and banish a couple of cards for Blackluster Soldier here. And the boy has made it onto the board. We're going to go ahead and banish our opponent's monster. That set card is Falco, summoned by its own effect. And at this point I realize I haven't performed my normal summon. We're going to normal summon the Trick Clown that's rotting in our hand. 1600 attack certainly adds up. We're going to talk real quick about Blackluster Soldier. No, it cannot attack the turn that it activates the banish effect. That's GOAT format card design for you. And after we add up all the remaining monsters on the board, my opponent's going to take it and say, oh, all right, let's go to Game 3. So here's Game 3, and unfortunately, I mean, we're going to have to draw something extremely powerful. Now, this deck does have equalizers. One of the incredible parts about the Shaddoll deck is that it has an absolutely unbelievable board wipe in the main deck in Super Polymerization. It even has targets. All of the Shaddolls need 1 attribute plus 1 Shaddoll monster, so provided you're willing to sacrifice your normal summon for something like a Shaddoll Wendy, you are very much able to eat incredibly important parts of your opponent's board in the pursuit of better Shaddoll. Alright, my opponent's going to go for a Terraforming here. And they're looking real quick. Oh, out of targets, are you? Just trying to activate Magical City of Endymion and get a couple of counters on it by activating Terraforming to get a copy of Hidden City, or Secret Village, but unfortunately, they boarded Secret Village out. That's not necessarily wrong. My deck is rife with spellcasters, so it's not like I was really planning on doing anything anyway. They're going to put a couple of counters on Magical City of Endymion, then activate the effect. I'll say, okay, I'm going to Ash Blossom. And then we have a little laugh as we remember that Ash Blossom is actually not in the structure deck. Oh, if only, if only. He's going to look at the hand real quick. Again, looks like a grip completely devoid of scales. My word. What are the odds on that? That Terraforming is doing him absolutely no favors. He's going to end on Little Jackal. Oof. And when you're getting Little Jackal, you realize that something's probably gone wrong. This is a flex spot in the Mythical Beast engine, but it serves a very specific purpose. From this position, it's very possible that he just pops off regardless. That Spell Power Mastery is looking pretty tasty, and he goes ahead and activates it in order to find a necessary scale to perform a pop-off. One of the things that's very frustrating about the girl limit is that while she only went to 1, you effectively have 4 copies of her, insofar as you can search her off of Spell Power Mastery, and you'll almost always have the fodder necessary to activate her effect by virtue of the deck's unbelievable spell potential. They're going to go ahead and get a Jackal King, and oh boy, monster effect negations are no good for me. Well, the rest of the hand isn't fantastic. It looks like they're going to link summon those 2 away in order to make Crowley. Crowley has been such an absolute boon to the deck, just giving it an unbelievable consistency burst. I'm rubbing my hands here ready to perform another American Snipe. Oh boy, you prepared me for this moment. All those years of sitting behind FPS shooters, only to deploy my skills now in a real-time card game. My opponent will shuffle the 3 cards so that it's truly random. I'm just gonna roll a die anyway. Alright, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what do I give him? Ooh, the secrets. Wait, that was not good. Alright, that's fine. Well, now my opponent, unfortunately, will likely have arrows for the next phase of his plan. He's going to go ahead and activate secrets, and of course, whoa, spill his cards everywhere. Judge, that's a game loss, actually. Oh, and look, there's the card he needs. And he's going to activate Blue Boy's effect in order to get a copy of Knowledge. I'm going to check real quick to see if he has the Knowledge in the opener. And it looks like we will be going back in. So Knowledge is going to net him a couple of cards, and hopefully the scale's necessary to perform a positively powerful pop-off, but as long as he can manage a Pendulum Summon at all, getting that Jackal King back is probably lights out for my deck. Yeah, another copy of Spell Power Mastery is rough, but it looks like he did pick up a Pendulum Monster, which might be enough. I'm looking at my grip right now, and it's 5 monsters. It's 5 monsters! Sometimes you just draw 5 monsters, hey! Still deciding on combo options. I mean, one of the things that prevents me from picking up Pendulum is that the lines are so absolutely varied, and the options for what you can go into are so absolutely different, that turning the corner against an unknown deck or a person playing 3 copies of a structure deck is much more difficult than it sounds on paper. You can't just go into the, like, quote-unquote optimal line. You need to be tailoring your first turn setup to what your opponent is doing. That's very difficult when your opponent's doing something that you don't fully understand. You know, what do you do in the face of a potential set 1 monster pass? What's the best number of monsters you can set up in order to ensure that that monster isn't, I don't know, exactly a hedgehog, which will fetch a copy of Shaddoll Fusion and perform an unbelievable Shaddoll pop-up on the next turn. Whatever it is, my opponent is deep, deep in the tank. Alright, it looks like finally he's decided on Reflector. A wise choice, but with only 2 pendulums in the hand, I would hope that there would be a scale at some point. They're going to activate Instant Fusion as well. Well, they can't get Norden. I don't know what I'm really scared of here, and there's Millennium Eyes Restrict. Okay, let's perform a Link Summon, I suppose. I don't know what 3 you would possibly go into. I mean, I can't really think of a relevant 3 in this matchup. I don't know, maybe a triple burst pass. That'd be ridiculous. It's just... What? I immediately have to look at this card. This is the Tenyi Link 3. Oh my word. Alright, well, as hilarious as this is, I don't think it's actually that much of a threat to my game plan. And with that, he'll pass. Apparently does not have the tools necessary to go off. Well, we should be able to beat this. You can see we've drawn off the top Super Polymerization, which is just about the best remaining card in our deck. Unfortunately, Super Polymerization isn't quite as good as I want it to be. Summoning from both sides of the field, unfortunately, comes at a steep cost. And that cost is you probably have to use your normal summon unless you're eating your opponent's entire board. In a more just world, the structure deck would come with a copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, but we do not live in a just world, and as a result we are forced to normal summon Shaddoll Wendy. We will activate Super Polymerization and discard a card from our hand, deciding on the Electromagnetic Turtle. Before fusing both sides of the board away, our opponent's appropriately typed Light Monster for a copy of Construct. We'll activate the effect of Construct and the effect of Resh. Ooh, wow, and this is a very commanding position despite our hand being full of absolute garbage. I'm deciding on the monster I want to summon. This is a hard one. If I expect my opponent to pop off, I would want to get something like Hedgehog, but if I expect them to be able to destroy Hedgehog with something like, oh, I don't know, the effect of Endymion, which I do, I'd much prefer to get something else. I could use Construct to send Dragon here, and this monster doesn't float, so I would be able to rob him of his last remaining scale. That might be enough to win the game, but I'm not exactly sure. You know, do I commit my Shaddoll Construct's effect send to send a copy of Dragon, and then do I special a monster that will only be good if my opponent is able to pop off? I decide to hedge my bets. I'm going to send Dragon, and I'm going to attempt to prevent my opponent from getting back into the game by ensuring that if he does so, he will be punished appropriately by a search off of Shaddoll Hedgehog. The only punish for this is if my opponent has both scales necessary to make Master Endymion. Unfortunately, Mythical Institution has about 15 counters on it right now, having absorbed the ones from Reflection. So we'll just get in for 2,800 and hope that our opponent can't kill us on their next turn. Again, one of the downsides of this version of the Shaddoll deck, and maybe an argument for playing more trap cards in the main, is that it has a really hard time closing out games. It isn't able to just assemble an OTK out of nowhere. It isn't able to flex cards like A-Lister and Purgatrio in order to resolve gummy board states. It isn't able to put up multiple negations in the form of a Makaba and a Winda. Unfortunately, it just has to play fair. Even though it does occasionally get double Foolish Burial by way of Shaddoll Fusion, it doesn't always translate into victories. My opponent thinking real quickly, unfortunately it looks like they have drawn a scale, which means that they likely will be able to perform at least a Pendulum Summon this turn. Ooh, man, that copy of Spell Power Mastery is just staring me back in the face. As soon as he activates it and searches Endymion, I am in a world of hurt. What I wouldn't give for a copy of Unending Nightmare, but going second, I thought I would side them out. He's going to reveal the Spell Power Mastery. Yeah, there's going to be about 18 counters distributed after the resolution of this card. We are going for Endymion, it looks like, and oh boy, that is a disaster. I'm going to be able to activate the effects of most of these cards, however, which might keep me in it. Provided we send the right stuff off of the right monsters and add the right cards to our hand. If we're not getting OTK'd, we might just be able to do it. Endymion has now made it into the hand, and I am sweating. I'm going to look at my Hedgehog. No, it hasn't gained additional effect text in the last time you took a look at it. The good news is that we might not be dead by virtue of having Electromagnetic Turtle. That might be enough. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm hoping. Alright, so the Endymion goes to the hand. Thankfully, there's not free counters. That Terraforming Dead and Grip is doing wonders for me. Counting real quick about the number of counters that'll be on field. It's going to be a lot no matter what. Nestled nicely under my branding is that City of Endymion, and it is just ticking up. A doomsday device in the making. My opponent's thinking of a line, checking the time, seeing if in fact we can stall for lethal. Not while you're down, unfortunately. I'm going to get at least one more turn out of this should I survive, and it's going to be a big one. Shaddoll Construct, unfortunately, there's no really clean way to deal with this card for anyone. As long as it's permitted to float, you can guarantee there's going to be an additional one on your next turn. Alright, he's going to go ahead and set this copy of Lil Baby Jackal. That's going to tick up the copy of Magical City of Endymion. There's one scale completed, and there is the Pendulum. Alright, from here we can perform an absolutely outrageous Pendulum Summon. Look at that extra. Wow, so many powerful cards in one place. This concentrated wealth should be illegal. I think at this point he's really just thinking about what exists in the structure deck. There's no Nibiru, so you don't have to worry about that. What exactly do you need to be playing around? Are there hand traps? Is there, God forbid, a Battle Fader, a Swift Scarecrow? It would make logistical sense. Could that screw up? And in a world where I resolve one of those, could I El Shaddoll my way into an easy victory over my opponent's monsters? A lot of things to be considering before performing probably the last summon of the turn. Finally, he's going to decide on a copy of Jackal King, followed by a copy of Jackal King. Oh, yikes, that's terrible. 2 negations, soft OPTs. Oh, no. Okay, well, now, of course, he can tick down this copy of Institution in order to activate the effect of Endymion. That Endymion is making it onto the field and will be destroying my entire board. I really needed this Shaddoll Hedgehog to flip. Okay, well, we can activate the effects of these monsters. Unfortunately, I don't have a target for Construct, so Construct can't activate. That means Hedgehog is the only thing activating, and this negation is really going to hurt me should it happen. It looks like my opponent is electing to allow this copy of Hedgehog to resolve, which is, like, cool, but not necessarily good enough. I don't really know what I would want added to my hand. I already have 4 monsters in it. What more could I possibly need? We'll go for a Shaddoll Wendy. Maybe that could do something in a world where, I don't know, Foolish Burial Goods manifests itself into my deck, and I'm able to send a copy of Incarnation in order to flip it up and summon a Shaddoll from deck, and also I'm able to use my skill Neostorm Access in order to get a relevant Link monster from our extra, and then I'm able to pop off with an A-lister that I add to my hand from outside of the game with Glittering Wish. I'm going to activate Electromagnetic Turtle, and they're going to negate with the remaining Fresh Jackal before dealing all but 400 of my life points. I regret to inform my opponent that I am still very much alive. We could do this, we just have to get a God draw. They're going to pass it back to us, and what do we find off the top? Oh my god, that's really good. Wow, El Shaddoll Fusion really unlocks our hand. It's full of monsters. All we need is my opponent to kind of blink here and call my bluff. If they believe that I'm using El Shaddoll Fusion as a card to protect a more powerful spell, they will let it resolve and I'll be able to potentially win the game. If they correctly understand that it's the only action in my hand and they negate it with this copy of Endymion, then I lose. Then I actually lose the entire game. He's going to think about it real quick. You can't hear over the audio track, but he's really talking out loud to himself right now. What possibly could end a run like this? A Shaddoll Fusion in the opener? I haven't had a chance to activate it yet, so possibly he decides, in fact, he will Endymion, and oh boy, that is really bad. Okay, well, let's set the Wendy and pass it back. Of course, with the fresh negates, I don't think it's very likely that it's going to resolve. He's going to set that Endymion again and tick that counter up. Ugh, my god, I hate how repeatable this deck is. Gonna put a couple of counters on all of these Jackal Kings and perform a Pendulum Summon. There's Mist Valley Apex Avian. Yeah, I'll scoop to that. Ugh, very frustrating. His draws were so bad. I feel like if I was playing anything just a little more aggressive, we easily could have walked away with Game 3 at the very least. A lack of equalizers and a lack of aggro is really hurting me here, but there's almost no way to resolve it with the cards that are in the structure. Regardless, going 2-1 versus an actual competent, arguably meta deck is pretty impressive for a deck that's been built on a budget of $30. Well, we are squarely in the X1 bracket. Our opponent for the second round is on Hunders. U-Hunder. A Q-Cunder. And that's the last time I'm making the Xavier Renegade Angel joke. Enjoy it while it lasted. It's never happening again. At the very least, this will be a fun one. It's been a long time since I've seen these monsters. What you're seeing right now, covered up by the name of the deck this time, was an activation of Thunder Seahorse. They're going to normal summon a copy of Brohunter, and wow, that foiling actually looks pretty cool. Brohunter is an extremely powerful, repeatable engine that has just been absolutely eclipsed in terms of modern card design. Like, think how strong this card would be in a slow format like Goat or something. It adds anything from this pseudo-archetype, but unfortunately it costs your normal summon, and it has 900 attack. Our opponent's gonna set 2 and pass it back to us. Okay, well, at the very least, we can rest assured we're not going to get much use out of our Shaddoll Fusions this game. I'm going to go ahead and draw for turn. I don't really know what I'm expecting, but knowing there's Thunder cards involved, it will probably be some sort of a stun deck. I'm going to lead with an El Shaddoll Fusion, and I really can't stress this. This version of the deck absolutely must find one of its fusion spells, or it is out of luck. Unfortunately, we have to send Ariel and Trick Clown in order to get a copy of Construct. Our hand is very not good. We'll activate the effect of Construct and the effect of Ariel in order to banish our opponent's cards, and the effect of Trick Clown, basically just to chain block at this point. Really can't stress how unpowerful Trick Clown is when it lacks the ability to be turned into Link material. we're going to send a copy of Hedgehog, and Hedgehog hopefully will add a more relevant Shaddoll to our hand. We're going to go ahead and get Beast. This is sort of a spoiler for where the rest of the game is going to go. If you see your opponent add a Beast to their hand, you know that they are probably going to perform another fusion summon if they are at all able, and you can see the El Shaddoll fusion lurking in our grip here. We're going to attack into our opponent's Bro Hunter, do a fair amount of damage in the process, and, I don't know, set a couple of cards, one of which is an extremely telegraphed El Shaddoll fusion. Sure. That's 3. We'll pass it back to our opponent. Oh, what I wouldn't give for a Heavy Storm Duster. Now, our opponent's going to think real quick. I mean, there's not a lot you can do when you're playing a deck like this. They're going for, I think that's Paw Hunter? And then they special Maw Hunter. What's funny about the Hunters is that they don't even all have different effects. 2 of them have the exact same effect, which is to, when it's normal summon, special a Hunter from your hand, although I don't know if it's typographed as Hunter. Unfortunately, they have hard once per turns, and as a result, they need to be named different things just so you don't run into that problem. That's actually the reason. They're going to go into Castell here. Castell's actually, I don't think, really a problem for us at all. If they spin the Construct, which I think it's likely that they do, now we have our extra monster zone open to activate El Shaddoll Fusion, and we can pop off that way. I'm going to think real quick about how I want to do this, and I decide I will go ahead and activate El Shaddoll Fusion using the targeted copy of Shaddoll Construct as material. We're going to go into another Shaddoll Construct using Beast to fulfill our Shaddoll, half of the bargain, and Construct to fulfill the light one. Then we'll trigger the effect of Beast and the effect of Construct in order to send a Shaddoll to the graveyard and draw a card. Beast is one of those cards that you never hate sending. It's like, oh no, not Beast. I don't get to select the card I draw, like something like Hedgehog. I'm going to have to just randomly draw, but it's just such a powerful generic effect that I'm not really beat up about it. What I am beat up about is the Torrential Tribute my opponent has activated, and looks like my conception that there would be stun involved was correct. So now we're going to be able to activate the Grave effect of Shaddoll Construct. This is the one that was sent for the material for the other Shaddoll Construct. The effect of Shaddoll Construct on the field in order to send a card, the effect of Beast to draw, and then the effect of Trick Clown to summon itself. Trick Clown, of course, is really just performing a duty as a blocker here. You know, he's not really doing anything other than protecting my chains and my life points, but I honestly couldn't ask for much more in this specific scenario. We've also sent a copy of Reshadal Wendy, and my opponent's going to go ahead and Called by the Grave it. Okay, well, this Trick Clown is going to matter more than ever. Alright, they're going to activate Recycling Batteries. I asked to see it, and they go, it's salvage. Okay, I understand what this card does now. This Trick Clown is doing mad defense here. Oh boy, looks like he's added back Maw Hunter and Bro Hunter, the 2 best ones, I might add. He's going to look at the graveyard real quick. I'm going to Resh Shaddoll Incarnation. I think he's elected not to actually go for a normal summon here. Instead, not wanting to turn on Shaddoll Fusion, unfortunately, will cost him, as I'll just reborn this construct and get back a big beater anyway. I'm going to go ahead and draw for turn, and oh my god. Oh, I just have so much in hand now. These have been extremely fortuitous draws, I won't lie. So we're going to set one card, then we'll activate the Resh Shaddoll effect in graveyard. Just extremely powerful. We're going to banish a card. Obviously, in better versions of the deck, the card you banish matters immensely because you're able to summon it back via various measures. You're not really able to do that in this version of the deck, and, you know, as a result, I'm not too excited to fire it off. Beep, beep, beep. Illegal play alert. The studious among you may have realized that this Wendy was, undercalled by the grave. Well, despite that, we've used her effect to summon a Squamata face down, but it ends up not mattering. Please do not tell our OTS judge. I'll get in with this copy of Construct, with this copy of Wendy, and then we'll activate this El Shaddoll Construct to fuse them both away for lethal attack. Well, it's time for game 2, and I'm not really sure what my opponent wants me to do. I think if I'm in their position, I make me go first, and it looks like that's what they're permitting us to do. This deck doesn't really have a good first turn setup. You know, we don't have access to Cloth Sheep, we don't have access to Invoked Lines, and as a result, normal summon Mathematician Pass is about as good as it gets. Navigating Mathematician lines, especially this early in the tournament when I'm still a little unpracticed with Shaddoll, is hard. Mathematician is very easy to resolve on boards where your opponent has already deployed threats. You know what you want to destroy and how you can destroy it, but when your opponent hasn't done anything yet, it's hard to be like, yeah, maybe I'll send a Hedgehog and get a Wendy for next turn. I could see myself conceivably needing that. Obviously, it's all very contextually dependent on what's in your opener. We're going to go ahead and take the Wendy here. I suppose she will come in handy at some point in the future, before giving the deck back to my opponent to cut, and then setting a whole bunch of cards and passing. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! As Bobby Konami intended. 1, 2, and the T-set reigns supreme. Our opponent will draw for turn, and this time he has drawn some things that actually allow him to play the game. First of which is Thunder King Ryo, and I love seeing this card. I mean, you don't get to see it that much anymore because it's so easy to get over, but in a world where Droll is king, the Droll on legs is quite strong. We're going to take 400 for this attack, but ooh, getting Mathematician destroyed by battle, it just doesn't happen that often nowadays. Fantastic to be able to draw a card. Feels good. Unfortunately, Ryo prevents adding from the deck to the hand by anything other than drawing, so I am able to resolve this. My opponent's going to be my T-set with a triple set. Oh, wow. I'm getting flexed on big time. I'm going to activate El Shaddoll Fusion at end step, sending a copy of Electromagnetic Turtle to the graveyard in order to summon a copy of Construct. We'll trigger Construct and, oh, what is that, the Wendy in graveyard here? And my opponent's going to read their own copy of Ryo real quick. No, it doesn't stop any of this, unfortunately. It would have stopped had I said something like a Squamata, so we'll just set the Squamata face down, so we'll be able to destroy this copy of Ryo on our opponent's next turn. And we're going to send a copy of Dragon. I might as well get one of these, and what do you know? We hit the Solemn Warning. Hey, feels good, man. Alright, well, a pretty powerful end phase here. I should be able to pop off. The very first thing we're going to do, of course, is flip up this copy of Squamata, destroying this copy of Ryo. My opponent's going to look real quick at the two cards they have set. Man, I mean, it's kind of hard to make this decision. If you have Negation, you probably don't use it, because the Shaddoll Construct is just going to destroy the Ryo regardless. And so, after a little bit of deliberation, he's going to look at the graveyard real quick and decide to let it through. Alright, well, from this position, I'm feeling pretty good. We're going to activate Mathematician's Effect, and this should be an OTK, since you can see we have the other copy of El Shaddoll Fusion in our hand. We'll activate Mathematician's Effect, and our opponent says, wait. Before you activate the effect of Mathematician, I'm on normal summon, I'm going to go ahead and reveal another Torrential Tribute. Oh, boy. Okay, well, that's going to spell an end to our high hopes of OTKing this turn. We're now going to have to figure out a mechanism by which we can do something relevant. We do still get to send something for the Mathematician. We're going to send a Wendy here. We get to activate both Construct and Wendy, and I feel pretty good about our chances, given that information. So we're going to go Construct first and Wendy second in order to play around, I don't know, Ash Block. I actually don't know why I would do that. Maybe I'm playing around Bell. Yeah, that's it. I'm playing around Bell. My opponent, unfortunately, doesn't have Bell. They have a copy of Called. They're going to negate the Construct, I think correctly this time. Last time, in a similar scenario, they negated Wendy, and it didn't end very well. Negating Construct in this scenario is much better. Wendy, unfortunately, is just going to have to special something fantastic, and we don't have very many things left. I'm going to look at the graveyard real quick, and it is absolutely chock full. I think Beast is maybe a good get. After a little bit of deliberation, we are actually going to settle on Beast, and drawing two cards is just going to have to be enough. Alright, so that aside, let's pass it back to our opponent, who now has full control of the board. He asks real quick what Beast's defense is, and I flip it up because I don't know either. They're going to set one card and pass, and oh my god, we might get to resolve it. We'll activate the effect of Beast. Gonna draw 2 cards and discard 1 in this scenario. Feeling pretty good about it until I see the Solemn Strike. Okay, well, we knew there was gonna be stun always, so let's go ahead and send that beast to the graveyard. Oh, man, and the hand is looking meager. You can see we have a copy of Shaddoll Fusion, but unless our opponent commits to something, we're not going to be able to use it. Okay, well, this is something. There's Pawhunder, and what is that? Vylon Cube? Wow, this is some absolutely brutal Thunder roleplay here. Okay, well, our best case scenario here is our opponent goes into a rank 4. A rank 4 would give us the material necessary to activate the Shaddoll Fusion, and from that position we could easily overwhelm our opponent in advantage. As they overlay, I get a little excited. It looks like they're going for a Link Summon here. They're thinking about it real quickly. And then it looks like decide against it. They're going to go back into the graveyard. Oh, please just overlay. Any rank 4 would do it. Oh, please. It's so much better for us. And there it is. Woo! All right. Now let's see what they may... Oh. Okay, yeah. So Abyss Dweller is actually a huge problem. They're going to get in for 1,700, and we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with that. Okay, so with no graveyard effect activations, basically our entire deck is turned off, but we still can overwhelm just by, you know, making a fusion monster with Shaddoll Fusion, provided our opponent doesn't have, like, an Ash Blossom. We'll draw for turn, and, okay, time's up. Time to fire this bad boy. We're going to activate Shaddoll Fusion. Our opponent is going to chain the effect of Abyss Dweller, and we'll activate Lost Wind! That sideboard coming in handy! Oh, boy. Lost Wind is such a powerful card for so many reasons. Not only does it negate monster effects, it also has their attacks, so it can be activated in the damage step, and it's repeatable, and worst of all, it's forever. It's not even like Breakthrough Skill, where it's a one-turn activation, and then you can activate it again from the graveyard. No, both halves of it work unto infinity. We're going to make Construct here, and we've sent a Trick Clown as well. We are just about out of light targets. We're going to go Construct 1, Trick Clown 2, and wow, I mean, Trick Clown's not a great card in this build, but really just the ability to resolve your Construct unimpeded and unafraid of hand traps is almost impossible to overstate. We're going to go ahead and send a Resh Shaddoll Incarnation with this copy of Construct, and we'll add a Squamata to our hand using the effect of what I believe was a Hedgehog we sent as well. We'll activate Incarnation's effect in the graveyard, banishing the Hedgehog we just sent to flip up the Squamata we just set, and then we'll use that effect to destroy our opponent's copy of Abyss Dweller. Now, we no longer have to deal with that. Our chance of assembling an OTK is going up by the second. We're going to fire off an Allure of Darkness with 0 cards in hand. We find off the top 2 spells and traps. Drew 5 monsters last game, and now we can't draw any. Okay, we'll get in with this copy of El Shaddoll Construct, we'll get in with this copy of Squamata, and what do you know, we also have a copy of El Shaddoll Set. We'll fuse, and that should be lethal. Our opponent's going to think real quick about if they have anything to respond to this with. No, we're the deck playing Electromagnetic Turtle. I'm trying to decide what to go into. Well, these two do have different types, so I think Op Cologne is probably the best option. I'll go ahead and reveal it, and our opponent will concede. Okay, so we're 1-1. Shouts out to our opponent for bringing such an innovative deck. Tune in next week for rounds 3, 4, and 5. Hopefully we'll play meta and do better.